Alright, everybody, for the first time in a long time, welcome back to another episode of Talk and Draw. This is episode 11, obviously, but with the way I plan to structure this series going forward, it might as well be episode 1, because I feel like I've gotten to a point where I can make this series the way that I envisioned it in my head when I first started. But, aside from all my rambling, let's get into the good stuff. Before I start going off on all the artistic tangents and knowledge that I have accumulated from the gods of the universe themselves, I want to bring a little disclaimer here. I don't typically do this, but because of what I'm talking about in this video, I feel like it's necessary. I am not qualified to be teaching anyone anything. So, everything I say in this video in regards to advice and the topic I will be covering, you should take with a grain of salt. If the advice helps you, well, hey, more power to you. I'm glad I could do something for you. Come back, like and subscribe, you know what I'm saying? Alright, cool, let's start the video. Alright, for the sake of not losing my voice as I'm recording this, I'm going to be referring to original characters as OCs. Keep in mind, OC is short for original character. I'm going to assume you know what original means, so I'm not going to take the time to explain that to you, because it's an elementary word, original, you know? What does original mean? Now that we know what an OC is, or aka original character, let's look at what goes into making one. And, you know, depending on the reason you choose to make an OC, you may or may not want to know what you plan to do with that character going forward. You know, you could be creating the character for a narrative purpose, in which case you might want to think about how they contribute to your story, the overall plot. If you're just making an OC to make an OC, well, there are still things in this list that I'm going to talk about that you can consider, because it will help you creating the character. Okay, so for starters, let's take a look at my OC and main character of my webtoon, Lotus. Link in the description, shameless self-plug. When I was making this character, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with him, or the world around him, or if there was going to be a world around him, or if it was just an idea that I had that I didn't want to do anything with. Eventually, I ended up writing the story, but that's a conversation for another video. When I was making this character, I had no idea what I wanted to do with him from a writing perspective, because I didn't know who he was, or better yet, I didn't know who I wanted him to be. So, as I sat there pondering, you know, whether or not I wanted to make this guy just another typical shonen protagonist, or diverge from those set of tropes that come with almost every anime-based webtoon or manga or series that come out nowadays, I had an idea. Instead of just planning out what I want to happen throughout the character's entire life and having him react to those things, why don't I instead start with developing a personality? A character's personality is essentially what determines every other facet of their being in their continuity, you know? But how do you develop an imaginary personality is what you might be asking yourself. Or maybe you're not, and you're just thinking, what the hell is this guy talking about? In which case, both are understandable. But unless you're, you know, similar to me, you have mental illness and you just make up people and then draw them all the time, you might struggle with that. And so, you can do what I did and go on Google and look up what makes an interesting main character. And here I was given a list of questions, which I'm going to go over my responses to them to kind of give you an idea as to how you can answer these questions yourself if you're interested in doing this. Keep in mind, there are no right or wrong answers to these questions. It's all subjective, you know, because it's your character. So whatever you want to do with them, however you want to answer them, however simple or complex the answers may be, it doesn't matter. You're not right or wrong. The first question that the website listed off was, what is this character's overall goal? Now, coming up with this one off grip was hard for me, because I can't think of an overall goal for a person that doesn't even have any set morals or values or anything like that, right? So, we'll come back to that one. It's the first question, but we're going to save it for last, because I feel like the other questions that they ask are what allow the person to come up with an overall goal for their character. So, let's go to the next question. The external conflict. My main character's external conflict is stemming from the area that he's staying in. For me to answer this question specifically, I had to do a little bit of world building to understand how things were working around the character and how they might be affecting him. After you talk about the character's external conflict, you can then move on to think within them. You know, they're dealing with these difficult things on the outside. How are they feeling on the inside? How would you be feeling is what I had to ask myself as I was coming up with this, you know? What is, based on your background and the situation that you're in now, if you were to be put in your character's shoes, say they are externally struggling with, let's say, I don't know, how they look physically, you know? They're out of shape or whatever. How are you going to feel looking at yourself in the mirror? You know, what are you going to do about that? What's your internal struggle with that problem? And so that's what I asked myself. Given that my main character has a background which didn't really allow him to develop his own self-consciousness until basically the point in time that the story is taking place, that was his internal struggle, trying to figure out if what he's doing is the right thing to do, and what is the right thing to do in general. Is there any objective answer? Who is he? Why does he do what he does? And where is he going with himself? That's his internal conflict throughout the majority of the story. But I don't want to spoil too much. Go read it, because I'll be dropping chapters when I drop them. And then one of the last questions they asked, before we go back to the overall goal, was, does the story happen to the character, or does the character happen to the story? Now, this confused me a little bit at first, and I had to do a fair share of research about what it meant for a character to happen to the story, because it would seem like if you have a story in mind for a character to follow suit in, you know, the events that take place, they would be reacting to them. But from my understanding, in order for a character to happen to the story, the events that take place within it are due to the character's actions. So the story happens because of the character. In this case, because my main character is very impulsive and I won't say brain dead, just headstrong and stubborn and very gung-ho about getting things done, he happens to the story rather than the events in the story happening to him. And with all of that stuff in mind now, we can return to the overall goal, in which I wrote in this notebook. At first, he doesn't have an overall goal because he's living based on the teachings of his old master, and that's like all he's known his entire life. However, he can't help but feel like he's spent the majority of his life dedicating his time to the teachings of a way of life that hasn't brought him any understanding of who he is. And his goal throughout the entire series is to figure that out. What does it mean to be yourself? Alright, once you have these questions answered, and you know, you have all these things in mind, who your character is, why they is, that's horrible grammar. Who your character is, why they do the things they do, and what they plan to do going forward. Or if you're not planning to do anything with them going forward, well, hey, this part is still important, because it's time to pick up the drawing board, or the pen and paper, or the tablet. Nigga, it's time to draw. Now, for the sake of keeping this video concise and to the time that I want it to be in, I'm not going to go too deep into actually drawing out the character and all the intricacies of design, because I do have another video about character design that I plan to drop later on. So, I'm not going to go too deep into that. But I will say, when coming up with character's design, similar to when you're drawing anything else, it's important to always, I can't stress this enough, always use references. Not just to make the clothes look accurate to real life, depending on how you dress them, but, you know, that's a choice as to whether or not you do that anyway, because, you know, people have differing styles, and, you know, some people's styles don't look realistic, and some people's do. So, that's a choice at the end of the day as well. But the point of bringing references into your field of view is to see what ideas and designs you can mash together, or just straight up steal for your own benefit. Yes, I said steal. Steal the designs, mash them together, make something new, quote unquote. As an artist or creator of any kind, when making something, it's important to know that there is nothing new under the sun. I'm sure you've heard that saying before, and in creativity, that applies so heavily that it's essential. It's must-have knowledge. Every piece of media that we consume is rehashed from a multitude of other mediums which have influenced the creator. You know, take me for example. Lotus is heavily based on Chinese mythology in relation to gods and all of the other mythical creatures that exist in that continuity. However, it's also influenced by One Punch Man, God of High School, Kaiju no 8, Jujutsu Kaisen, Hunter x Hunter, a video game called Absolver, Ninja Gaiden, the entire like trilogy, and even The Matrix and Kill Bill. So as you can see, I have a lot of different inspirations that I've taken in to create this story. You get what I'm saying now? Like, it's important. Nothing is new. The point of that whole tangent I just went on is to say steal. But when you do steal, make sure you steal like an artist. Please cut that out. Nope. I'm sorry, that was bad. Anyway, at this point in the journey, you know your character's personality, you know what their designs are, and now there's only one thing left to do. And that would be exactly what I'm doing in this time lapse you're seeing, which is making a character sheet. Now, I know I said this is the next step in everything, but in all honesty, it's entirely optional. However, I find it to be a rather important tool to have for reference of your character if you ever plan to draw them after creating them, which I would hope you do, because why create a character just to draw them one time and then never do it again? Doesn't make much sense. Anyway, the character sheet should include the character from at least 2 angles, a front and back one to make it easy on yourself so you know what the front and back of their clothing looks like, shirtless or not shirtless or clothless, or whatever you do with them. It don't matter. But it's important to have those 2 angles. And alongside those angles on the character sheet, you also want to have a couple different headshots that are showcasing emotions that the character might show throughout their interactions with other people or throughout the story. Because emotions are important. That's how we get across to one another, I guess. Anyway, moving on. Color it, don't color it, it doesn't matter. But once your sheet is done, then boom! You now have your very own original character. You're welcome. You're welcome. Was the teaching helpful? Probably not. I don't know. Did you get anything from this video? Maybe not. I don't know. If you did, let me know. Please, that would be cool. Anyway, with all that said, I'm gonna close out the video and this episode. Thank y'all for watching once again. Yet another video, and look out for the next one, because I'm gonna be talking about something different and it's gonna be cool. Yeah. All right. Peace out.